Hey, Ghost Machine fans, this one's for you.
Welcome to the Ghost Machine Fans Podcast, episode 22. We are 1 week out from the release of Redcoat number 5, which means it's time for another deep dive. I'm Canadian loyalist guest co-host Michael Schwartz, and I am joined, as usual, by the dynamic duo Nick and Snoggle. How is everyone doing tonight?
I am pumped up now, Michael. Thank you so much for that introduction. Woo! I'm ready to talk about Redcoat.
Woo!
I've been so ready since I read it. Pumped.
It is hard to wait a few days to record this, I have to admit.
So we are talking about Redcoat 5, and like you said, as usual, it's been a few days because this came out a week ago, as this episode is going to release on Wednesday, August 28th, and we've all had 1 week to read it, which I gotta tell you, I am surprised that I have not seen more spoilers on the Facebook group and stuff about this, but I feel like the community is so protective of how horrendous it would be to spoil this particular issue that everybody's been really respectful. So it's a big one, man. This is some unexpected Hitch John's tomfoolery.
Yeah, this is a culmination of everything they've been building to, it feels like, in a lot of ways.
You know what? I was on the Facebook today and somebody said, if you like Jeff Johns, you'll come to realize that he really tends to have a lot of buildup, a lot of crescendo, and even some misdirection to lead you to a final payoff that's always worth it. And I thought that was a really good way of putting it.
Yeah.
So we do have a shout out, and this one has been a long time coming. If you were on our Instagram recently, we were posting some videos. We're going to post some more of Fan Expo Canada, and we're hoping we can hear from Michael a little bit more about that event because he was there. But also in the past, we've posted videos of panels that the Ghost Machine folks did at Fan Expo Denver. And the person that sends us those videos is Tiffany Lee, and she's on Instagram as Lee Tiffany _ if you want to look that up. And she's like a foodie fashionista type of person, but she's also posted about her love of comics and Ghost Machine. And whenever she attends like these things, she's helped us get an understanding of what's going on for those of us who can't be there. And it really enables us to then disseminate that back out via that Instagram to all the people that are like also not be able to be there, like Michael's able to be. And that is really generous. Like, she takes a lot of time to do it, and she sent us a variety of things that we're going to be able to keep posting over the course of the next couple of weeks. And she even sent us this like super cool video of the Ghost Machine VIP dinner that she was at, and like panned the screen so that we could see the creators. And also they had like the cool room where you could get the super convention exclusives. And she did a little video of each of those. And that allowed us to put that all together with like special, like, you know, our video effects stuff that we like to do for fun. And it's a video that now, if you weren't there, you still have this like sense of like, oh, that's Jeff Johns, that's Jason Fabach, that's Francis Manipul, like right there talking to everybody. And it's really cool. And none of that could be done if she wasn't so generous, like with her time. So thank you so much for that, Tiffany. Make sure that you go check her out on Instagram. It's a neat Instagram. So you went to this event, Michael, huh?
I did. I did not go to the VIP dinner. Unfortunately, I've missed the past two fan expos here in Toronto, but I was fortunate that I was able to do one day this year. I was able to go on the Friday, so I didn't get to see all the Ghost Machine panels, but I was able to go to one where they paired up with the Kubert School to talk about how to break into comics, and I'm always one to continue learning. I still feel like I want to break into comics, so I was excited to go to that. And you know, Francis Manipul was there, and Brad Anderson were there to talk about, you know, their insights into how to get into comics. And I think, you know, for anyone, I think it's always good to continue to learn how to be better at something. And, you know, for me, I still want to keep making comics. So it's always insightful to hear what these, you know, these masters have to say. about the art form and just the business in general. So it was a cool panel. I wish I could have attended more panels, but I had some family obligations over the weekend and I was unable to go on the Saturday and Sunday. But it was great. They had their big Ghost Machine booth and they were doing signings all day that I was there. It was hard to get to the booth. There was so many people lined up. So it's good that their fan base is strong here in Toronto as well.
Several of them are Canadian, right? I know Brad is. Is Jason as well?
Jason, yeah, he's outside of Toronto, and then Francis lives in Toronto.
Francis
so,
lives in Toronto. Yeah, that's right.
There's a big Canadian contingency up here of Ghost Machine creators.
And as I recall, the Kubert School Scholarship is a Ghost Machine sponsored scholarship for a third-year student, which is intended to propel them to completion, I think is what we said when we spoke to Rob and Brad about it. That was really cool what they're doing there.
I think it's awesome.
So that's cool that you got to attend that. Very neat. And it sounds like it was a successful day, at least the one day that you did have. You got to check out the Ghost Machine stuff. Did you get to do anything with your book? The format, we've derailed everything because you did the intro. How is there any armored news?
No armored news. We don't need to talk about that. But I did hand it out to a lot of creators. Creators I hadn't met before, so I gave them copies at the convention. Mm-hmm. What was really cool about Fan Expo is they were actually giving away free copies of the Ghost Machine 1 issue, the standard one. Yeah, I thought that was like a really smart idea for anyone new to the book to just get a free copy. And also to get it signed. What an opportunity. So I thought that was really cool that they were giving that away in Toronto. And if you attended the panel, you got the Hyde Street ash can, which I'll let you talk a little bit more about, Nick, because you got a copy as well, right?
I did get a copy. I haven't opened mine, but have you had a chance to look at the video that Bruce and I and Snoggle made about that comic book by any chance?
No, not yet. What is it?
It's a good one. You got to go on the Instagram. It's one of our pinned reels. Okay. And it's a video about what happens on Hyde Street around here. That's all I'm going to tell you. But if you haven't watched that video, go check it out. It was pretty cool.
And everyone listening needs to go watch it. Pause it, watch it, come back.
Yeah. It's just a short video for fun, like the stuff that we like to make, bits for. The news is that if you open up that ash can, which very few people have done, but my friend Nick Churton told me that he opened his and that it was 8 pages of new material. And so that's pretty neat. I assumed it was just a reprint of what was in Ghost Machine #1, but apparently not. I don't know what it's about. I wouldn't want to spoil that for you because this isn't the 8-page Hyde Street Ashcan deep dive. It's the Redcoat 5 deep dive. Which brings us to another cornerstone of our format, which is the pause. And what type of a pause is it, Snoggle?
It's a spoiler alert.
It's an alert. Oh, that's right.
Alert.
That's right.
There's a noise now.
So what do you have to do? What's important about this pause?
Well, one, if you haven't read this book, which truly, what are you waiting for? You got to pause right now. Go get it. Read it. Come right back because it is so good. And we're going to go over every little detail about it. So we don't want to spoil it for anyone who hasn't had the pleasure of reading it themselves first.
Yes. Go on out to your local comic book shop and get a copy. We will wait here for you in the interim. But assuming you've accomplished your mission and you're ready to go, now we are going to talk about Redcoat #5. And before we talk about the creators and we open this bad boy up, there are 2 different covers. Everybody's talking about the sharks, right? Everybody's talking about these sharks. I've used the shark emoji on Instagram 100 times in the last 72 hours because of this comic book.
I love the shark cover.
That is an awesome cover. I do love Jaws. I also love a movie called Zombie, which features a zombie fighting a shark in it. It's an Italian movie. It's a must-see. This cover is awesome. It should be hung on everyone's wall.
When we were setting up for the episode, my son Bruce came into my office and he saw this on my monitor and he said, "Why is he in the water with the sharks?" Because he doesn't really know anything about Redcoat, but he knows like, oh, that's the guy in the comic book. Like, oh no, what's that about? And it's interesting because in this comic, we don't see him fall into the water or any of that, right? In the end,
Yeah. We were talking a lot about this in a previous
foreshadowing.
episode where we're not sure what's happening on the cover is in the past or if it's future events, or we're not sure. And this is another one of those. Like maybe that was just one. It looks like this whole cover, including, this is a
A wraparound.
wraparound. It's just a whole bunch of Redcoat deaths. So maybe these are just the various ways he's died in the past before being resurrected.
I was thinking that would make an excellent poster, like an excellent horizontal poster on one's wall. This cover. So we can either assume that since there's like a boat involved and we know what happens at the end of the issue, that maybe this is in his future and like this is foreshadowing. I have a feeling he's going to end up in the water and there are going to be sharks involved somehow, even though it's not necessarily this issue. Did you guys see the other one, the other cover?
Yes.
Are you talking about the cover B? It's Andre Lima and Chris O'Halloran.
Yep.
Because it's a sweet cover.
Yeah,
He's got a strong jawline in this.
He does have a strong jawline. Absolutely. It is a sweet cover. And this person has done a few other, this artist has done a few other covers. I recognize the name now. It's Andre Lima Arajo, something like that. And then Chris O'Halloran as well. It was one of the other, he was the cover colorist, so he did the coloring. And it's a grossly different cover. Like, he's at the bottom of a massive pile, dare I say, pyramidal pile of skulls. And he's holding this like cable-esque futuristic blaster that happens to be connected to a nuclear box on his belt.
This must be like when he crosses over with Geiger. It must be, right? This is the future.
Oh, absolutely. It's either the future or him from the future pulled into a different time because he's got the future gone. And we only know that because they do hang out with the Northerner and the portals and stuff, which we're assuming. But we have seen Geiger and the Northerner actually time travel. It's interesting because it's like, what's that gun? It's like a nuclear weapon, like a nuclear blaster for all intents and purposes because it's got the logo on there. It's kind of neat within like the world within the world where somebody might see this who's new to Ghost Machine and be like, oh, it's just a sweet cover. I'll get that one. I like that. It looks cool. But like we can kind of take it to another level as you become more familiar with the world of the unnamed, because you can notice little details like, oh, I bet that's when this occurs because we know about this and the timeline. And it's really cool to me that's that layering in the world of Ghost Machine that's building. So do you want to do a creator roll call on this one?
Back again for Redcoat, our creators are Jeff Johns and Brian Hitch. The inkers are Andrew Curry and Brian Hitch. And then we've got Brad Anderson, our colorist. And then our king of letters, Rob Lee, once again.
I like take snippets of these comic books and edit them slightly to help promote the podcast. And Ghost Machine kindly never gives me a hard time about it. But I can tell you, I can never find his exact font. Like, he must have the secret fonts because he's the king of letters. So that's our creator team. Where we left off was a magnanimous moment. If you recall, it had just been revealed to us that George Washington was the grand architect by Benedict Arnold, the altruistic friend of Simon Pure, who had just saved he and Albert Einstein from the clutches of the cult of the founding fathers, right? Are we there?
Mm-hmm.
What did you guys think of the way that this story began by it's Simon speaking on this first page entirely, right? But it's him kind of like narrating even more than usual, which I like. It's almost like he's becoming a little more sophisticated or thoughtful. He's becoming more thoughtful, but you get his perspective, but we also learn some interesting things about why American currency is printed the way that it is.
Well, I'll say two things, and then I want to hear from Michael. I really like that every single book starts off with, my name is Simon Pure. though I'm anything but, as you'll come to know. Like, it's just this super fun cadence where he's like, and you're back to what's going on. And then I like how they dig into how the money was made. And George Washington said, like, that his face had to be on the dollar bill. And there are a ton of conspiracy theories about the Illuminati and the way our money was designed in the beginning. Like, so I thought that was a really cool tie-in. There are people right now, I mean, I'm sure both of you have seen National Treasure.
I have not seen it, actually. It's one of those movies I haven't seen.
Nick Cage is very upset with you right now. It's so good. No. But I mean, they go over like all the little symbols on the bill and what they mean. And so I thought that was a really cool tie-in. So that was like in the opening where he's kind of, explaining where we're at, bringing us back to what's happening.
The thing I found interesting was he's recounting what Benny had told him about what happened to Washington. And the story he was told is that Washington was dragged down into like a pit of hell by a dark entity.
Mm-hmm.
So we all know what happens at the end. I wonder if that is true, if that is what happened to Washington.
It'd be very interesting when you think about Benny's room with all those like fat hell-like demon creatures.
Yeah, I'm curious to know if we will see this dark entity at some point. I hope we do. I love dark entities. Just give me all the dark entities.
That's the headline name of the episode right there.
Just give me all the dark entities.
No, I loved that part too. I'm a big Hellboy person, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. That means it'll probably come back at some point,
Yeah.
Or in the very least, you'll learn more about that particular whatever happened in more detail. It's kind of like the elephant in the room, right? We are going to go through this book like we normally do, but we do know that at the end of the book, there is a twist. And the way in which the story is told, which I like, is done in a way that's meant to continuously kind of affirm something that's not that twist, so that the twist hits us harder and more effectively. I will admit that. But I was thinking about this as I was meditating in preparation for this episode, watching our child practice soccer. And I think it's kind of like the Sixth Sense effect. Do you guys know what that is?
Yeah.
The
where
twist
you see
ending?
dead people.
Both of those things, yes. Right. So so what happens is the first time you see the Sixth Sense?
Shock.
Like you're surprised, right? Like, were you surprised? Did you know that was coming?
Yeah, you're surprised by the ending. Okay. But then when you rewatch it, you're like, oh, there's a clue, like that.
I felt the same way when I reread this, the second time. I was like, I bamboozled myself. It was all right there in front of me.
Yeah. And as you go, point those things out, right? Because I bet that some of them are more obvious to you than me, because I felt bamboozled, and I'm okay with being bamboozled. I felt like that it makes a lot of sense what happens, but I want to notice, like, now I feel like, because I know Benedict is pretending the whole time, that he's like, he is a deep-seated conspiratorial manipulative fella to pull this off to such an extent, right? The point is, we know that in the end, it's actually Benny, not George Washington. And so we kind of have to look at everything through that lens to be able to really get the experience that we're gonna in reviewing it with you guys and gals out there who read this comic book. Where do we start back up off of after they saved them? Where were they located and what are they doing?
So they're in a barn discussing their plans, right? Is this where we're at?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And he's very mad about Washington being alive. And I just feel, again, so dumb for believing him. But and this was one of the first clues for me, is that Albert was like, why would George Washington want to destroy his own country? He's like, this is fishy. Which we even said in our last deep dive together, lest you guys forget.
Yes.
We were like, that doesn't make sense.
He's the other interesting thing Benny is doing in this scene as they're discussing kind of plans and what to do is he seems to be turning Redcoat or Simon on, turning him on Einstein, like making the two kind of split apart a little, fracturing their relationship a bit.
Yeah.
Which eventually there is a fracture. But while I don't know if I'm jumping ahead too much, but while they're discussing, I want to call them the Ku Klux Klan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What are they
The
called?
National
again?
Lampoon's cultists.
They're called the founding, like the hooded cult is called the Founding Fathers.
Okay, the Founding Fathers burst in, and one of them says, "I got him, sir. I got him." That's where I'm the most confused. Is he speaking to
100%.
Benedict, or is he speaking to another cultist?
Oh.
Yeah.
That's a great point. So he says, "I got him, sir. I got him." So you know what? I would wager that they must know who he is. Well, they must be pretty smart to act.
Maybe they don't, because maybe he always wears that hood. By the way, did you guys think it was interesting before they burst in? They're arguing back and forth about what to do. Betty wants to leave. Simon's like, no, we can't. And for some reason, the person not from the country, the German in the room, is like, no, we have to save America, you guys. But they said that enchanted borders keep them trapped in the United States.
I thought that was interesting too. And it made me wonder if it's a magical thing. Is it truly the United States border, or is it the North American continental border? Because I'm overthinking this clearly, but because he gives the example of Patrick Henry, who was an immortal, like taking a boat out to see a fisherman to check on something, then disappearing because he basically left the barrier. I'm like, well, was the magic there and they took advantage of the magic, or was the barrier formed when they took advantage of the magic?
Because it did say when they leave the United States, anybody who's an immortal turns to ash. They basically turn to the age they are. So they lose their immortality and die immediately.
Yeah, but that's because of something that happened. So it's like, well, what happens like in Alaska and Hawaii? I'm just saying.
What about it? Yeah, what happens if you step foot in Ontario?
Whew.
You know, you want to check out Niagara
And how
Falls.
are they to know what the border is? Like, what is the fail-safe there? Like, oh, I started to age a second. Reverse.
Interesting. This will be interesting to find out. Yeah, that was a good question.
You brought something up that I didn't even think about when you said that, hey, sir, I got him. But it's also then on the next page when they're all coming out chasing them and he turns around and he uses his like super water magic and hits them all with this massive wave. Either they're acting and they know not to, and they know they're like, oh yeah, we're cannon fodder for this moment that we need to put on the whatever, or they don't know. And I think that's very possible that they don't know. And he wants to get Simon in, where he gets Simon to, and it's part of his plan, and he's a strategic, manipulative dude, and we do learn that more about him in the bio at the end of this issue. It's a good question. I don't think they knew who that it is. I think the henchman's talking to like the henchman captain.
Yes. Okay. That makes sense.
Right before they burst in this panel, and I think it's really neatly done, but is this where he gets nicked by the axe again?
Yeah, there's a bit of blood on it's like an axe is thrown into their room.
They're just always throwing this axe.
Got to get rid of that axe.
Ah!
Well, that's the second cut, right? Because they didn't get him with the second one because he got off the slab. So they just got him with like a quick hatchet throw. And it's like, okay. Mm-hmm. And they need to get a third one for the thing to be complete. And I presume is like his energy to be taken away or whatever.
Benny saves him at this moment, though, using that blast.
Which is like, doesn't make sense to me, because he could have just like let him get cut the third time, unless if he felt like it needed to happen at a specific place.
Maybe then he felt like he needed to get rid of Einstein because Einstein saved him the last time.
Mm-hmm.
I think he wanted to get rid of Einstein. He wanted to make that separation happen. And I think that we may learn, I don't know, I think we may learn in subsequent issues, like, I bet he has a reason that he wants to have him on that boat specifically, or he's such a strategist. That's emphasized so much that knowing how much Jeff Johns especially plays the long game, I feel like this is another twist in the web for all intents and purposes. But I also appreciate, like, even any great comic book does a little bit of like peeking around the curtain to readers to kind of nudge us in the right direction or make us feel a certain way. And this does that very effectively too, because now I want to go back and pick it apart after it was like, no way, I didn't expect that to happen. So he uses like super water magic.
He's a historical traitor.
Yeah, he is. Terrible.
I'm just mad at myself because, like, looking back, which makes it fun. I do feel.
Meaning you thought he was all right for a minute, and now you're like, man.
Yeah, I'm like, look at Benny. He saved them. Like, I'm starting to really like this guy.
Yeah.
Gosh. I will say the magic he does. Didn't you guys think that this looked amazing? Like the water coming up.
Oh my God, yeah.
We don't really usually get to have fantastic sound effects on the Redcoat episodes as much because there aren't as many. But the noise that comes out of these three henchmen is just stellar. I dig it. That's some Rob Lee IE for you.
Mm-hmm.
But to your point, I think the colors as well. There's so many different shades of light blue and whitish grayish, all those things to differentiate the blast of water that Benedict Arnold seems to summon up, I guess, from the ground, because it like erupts from the ground, and then there's like stuff going all over the place, and there's like a crater as well. It's funny because the henchmen like seem almost to get it, like sophisticated. Like one of them is like, pure as blood has been spilled a second time. Only once more and it's done. The Grand Architect will be pleased. And the other one's like, as long as we get paid, who cares?
So that's why I feel like there might be different levels to the henchmen, because like, I don't know if you noticed, like the guy who said pure as blood has been spilled a second time. And maybe this is just me looking too far into it, but his eyes look like kind of lighter blue.
Yeah.
Like maybe he's one of the actual founding fathers instead of some dude who's just getting paid. I don't know. We'll see.
Interesting theory.
Could be.
And then we get this scene with the three of them, Simon, Benedict, and Simon is in a bad shape at this point after that second cut. And Albert, who's looking through the book, trying to find a solution to the problem. And they're back in Benedict's like house area because there's those apple trees all over the place. And we even get this exposition tale of the guy that planted all the apple trees who was trying to, rebel against Washington and his cherry trees and all this stuff. And when I'm reading that, I feel like Benedict does really feel this way. It's presented though in a way where as a reader, I'm like, yeah, man, he's not that bad. He's all right. Like this guy's helped them out. Like I didn't have a sense of that comment at all at this point. Did you guys? Do you see any hints in here?
Of him being evil?
Of him being evil, of him like leading them towards something sneaky. You made a good point earlier that he's trying to divide Albert and Simon. I think there's a bit of that.
Yes, I think there's a bit of that again. And this is where Albert finds, is it a letter? What do you call this thing?
It was on one of the cult members. I think it's an invitation, and then there's a note on the back of the invitation.
Yeah. Meet George Washington in the captain's cabin at midnight. GW, George Washington.
Would be funny if it was like Greg Willis. And they're like, darn it. Greg again.
We're on the wrong ship.
Sorry, Greg.
Yeah, he's obviously trying to divide them too. Like now that you're looking, I mean, I could see it then, but now I see the nefarious reasons. Like when he said, you failed as you fail with everything. And your friend died, and this boy most certainly will. Like, I think he knows what Simon's triggers are, and it's the loss he's had. They've obviously been alive together for a while. And he's just like kind of picking at that little by little because he knows Einstein's smart enough to actually save him.
That's true. That's a very good observation. And what's nice is when he's really leaning into it, it says, if Washington is going to be on the SS Majestic, then that is the last place I'm going to be. And I imagine like seeing a play and then seeing a play the second time. And if I saw this the second time when the actor said that, I'd laugh because I know, like I know he's leaning so into it that he's trying to put a button on the deception, like make sure they definitely know, like there's no way he is the the grand architect because he's so scared of Washington he doesn't even quote unquote want to go to the boat. But
So
It's
Benny,
so manipulative.
he's manipulating him to get him on this ship. It's interesting. Why on the ship?
That's
Why
what I'm
not
saying.
just do his thing here? That's what I'm curious about. They need a way onto this ship to get to George Washington, and they go to, what is her name? This Morgan.
Is it the
Yeah.
Chase lady?
Yeah,
It
this
is.
Morgan
It's
Chase lady.
JP Morgan Chase. Yeah, well, that's what it is now. But I guess they call her Miss Morgan.
Yeah, Miss Morgan's
She's
house.
the gilded lady. She every time they draw her, Brad Anderson makes the room golden somehow. Like everything kind of glows.
Oh yeah.
I wonder if, we know how at least this book is going to end, right? Like Benny's got nefarious plans. But Albert Einstein asked him a pretty pointed question and said, like, because basically Benny's like, we can't save him. And Einstein's like, then you want to be alone because without Mr. Prior, you will be forever. So I wonder if like that ties into stuff that happens in book 6, maybe even 7, since even, Brian told us they're crazy issues, essentially.
Yeah. 7 was, I think he said, a major event or would be followed by a major catharsis.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good point because the panel after that is just Benny looking up quietly. And then he actually has a very like Brian Hitch. It made me think of like a character from The Authority walking off to battle. Like Benny throws his arms up in the air and he's like, "My name is Mr. Benedict Arnold, boy, let's bloody go." And even Simon smiles at it. Like in that moment as a reader, I'm like, heck yeah, this dude, yeah, he's overcoming his cowardice. Oh my gosh, he helped him out. Like this dude ends up being the character I like. Even Simon smiling at him. Super deception. I feel so manipulated. I'm just saying. I didn't see that coming at all. Do you know what I mean? Like he gets a cool moment for Benedict. He comes off as cool in that to me.
Yeah.
Like very cinematic moment that's like, oh, you think it's a turning point for the character. So they do, like you were saying, they end up at her house. They're gonna have some bacon. And why are they there?
Sausage.
Biscuits too. Like there's probably beans somewhere on that table.
Oh, there have to be. There wouldn't be Ghost Machine.
Correct.
So why are they here? Why did they go see her?
To help get them onto the boat, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And that is the boat that George Washington is supposedly going to be on, according to the invitation with the note.
Yeah. And she said, no adults allowed at this special party.
Mm-hmm.
The party's for adults only. And so even Simon says the boy is staying put.
Do you think she's in on it?
That's what I was about to ask. Did Benny get her to say this?
Oh, that's a great subtle thing. I would wager based on the era that it's the truth. And however, I would also wager that it being the truth is foreshadowing to something darker than it just being like no kids allowed.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? And then maybe that is why she is into it.
Doesn't it feel like a pretty strange coincidence, though, that like we've already seen her at one of his soirees and she can get them on the exact boat they need to be on?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think that the jury's still out on Miss Morgan, as far as I'm concerned.
But this does lead to a big split between Simon and Einstein because he, Einstein says, I promised my sister I would stop her vision from coming to pass. Yes, well, promises are made to be broken, is what Simon says. Mr. Pure, the discussion's over, lad. And so he basically throws Einstein out of the house after this.
It is so freaking sad.
It is really sad.
You're just another fish to me, boy. That's all. That's it, go swim away. And I think we all know he doesn't really mean that. He just knows he needs to say it.
Yeah, I agree.
And why do we know that he doesn't really mean it?
Because he's holding his hand against the door like he misses him. It's very Spock, against the...
Yeah.
The good of the many outweigh the good of the
No.
one. That's what he says in that scene, I think.
I think earlier in the book, he's like, the boy's quite bright. Like, he starts to, like, actually say some nice accolades and, like, agree with Einstein when they're, like, in the barn and all of that. I mean, I could be wrong. You could just see it.
We definitely know that he doesn't mean it. And the reason is because he is immediately after he leaves, he tells Benny that he doesn't mean it.
Yeah.
He tells Benny that if he sticks around, he's going to die, or that one day he's going to die, but he doesn't want it to be in his sight. And I even love how, like, that's whispered, and it's like the font, it's made smaller, but it's almost like a little blurred, because it's like you can feel from the font, like the way that Rob did that Simon doesn't want to say it. And I thought it was interesting that Benny says, "Oh yes, I understand, of course," and Simon says, "I realize that this very moment you're the only man who does," because he's another immortal. So this is, I think this is something you see with immortal characters where they get into like that morose thing. And Becky, you pointed out before in a past episode how like immortality could become boring and lose meaning and things like that. This is like one of those times when they're like, hey, you know what? I've had so many friends. There's so many people that I gave this shot to already. And like, I destroyed so many lives because of it. You should go be on your own. Don't be in my radius because you're gonna come to harm. And that's a noble quality in a way, I guess, or something. It shows that Simon isn't just like, I'm gonna forget about you in 15 minutes, kid. Like, he's more than that.
So where did
and
they
his
end up?
plan worked. You can kind of, he's like, yeah, and I was just starting to grow fond of him.
Yeah, and clearly the plan did work. So they do end up back at the boat, another big boat.
Another big boat.
It could be the same boat. Remember Einstein came off the boat probably 17 days ago now, based on what they said. And they're going back and forth, and Benny's really doing that further exposition. He's like, I need to get one more good lie in before I get him with the axe in the back. And he's like, oh, I'm so afraid. I'm so, like, he gives this whole like speech, and it's great because the first time you read it, you're like, man, what? He hit him? Like they have this great conversation, like where he's like motivating him to be like more courageous and better. And it is all just absolute manipulation. And I had no idea. I was truly surprised.
So I have a question about Benny here. Do you think he's manipulating Simon at the bottom of this page with the boat where he says, you don't understand what George Washington did to me, Simon? You really, like, he looks traumatized there. He looks, the way Brian has drawn that panel, he covering his mouth like something bad happened.
So
I'm very intrigued to find out what it is, because I actually do believe something like traumatizing happened back when, of course, we discover who actually died that night. And it may or may not have been somebody who we were told was alive, but I don't know, maybe something did happen. He does seem to actively despise the man.
Yeah.
He does.
He says, I was absolutely terrified by the man on the next page.
So if George Washington is not the grand architect, which we know is true based on the flip of this page, then it does not necessarily mean that the tale of George Washington falling into like the pits of hell with the dark entity is untrue.
No, it means that's still true. He has Simon almost consoling him, making him feel better. It's like, oh, it's okay. Like, I'm here for you. We're all scared of something. He's really trying to make Benny feel better. And then immediately, the bottom of that panel, he is stabbed in the back by Benny.
Yeah. And I think your guys are right. I think he really does feel that way about George Washington, even though he hasn't seen him since that day that he was dragged down into the pits of hell. And I think he channels it to be as real and manipulative in this moment as he can. But
and it makes me so mad because he even, like, after he gives this sob story where he's like covering, it's like he's trying not to cry. And Simon is not one to comfort others. You know, we haven't seen a ton of that. And he says, we're all scared of something, but not all of us can destroy our greatest fear. Like we can Washington. Like, what do you say? And he's being so nice to him.
yeah, you're thinking this is the start of a dynamic duo, and like this guy's gonna be the guy in the chair. He's gonna be the guy in the chair, or something like that. No, that's not what happens. It's more like he's the Red Skull or something. Yeah, he's the Red Skull. And because he gets him right in the back, and that's the third, if you recall, that's the third swipe of that axe, which indicates that I think that the whatever is complete, the badness that had to happen. I love the fact that I was surprised. I like the fact that I can go back and read through it and notice some differences in retrospect. I think that it, again, is something that doesn't happen very much in film as much as it could in this particular case, especially panel to panel, and how they can affect you with what they're going to show right before the twist, right? Yeah. They did have a really cool bio at the end of the Grand Architect, which is neat because it's essentially the first time we've seen a bio of the same character twice. But it did note something interesting, that he, in his abilities, it says that he does find himself in a near constant state of hunger, even though he did not seem to act as that way, just like Simon does. So he must make an effort to hide that, and or he's wealthy, and he's always full because he's eating all the time. And it says his abilities are not limited to just immortality, though he keeps those secrets to himself. So I'm curious to see what happens there.
Interesting. Yeah.
I have questions for both of you guys.
Okay.
Where was he hiding this axe? Like,
well, the axe was thrown, and who did anyone grab it?
So he's had it ever since, right?
No, it was thrown at him.
Right.
He must have grabbed it on his way.
There must be like an axe stash spot.
No, but Becky, you're right. If you go back to when they're being chased, the lead goon has it in his hands, and then Benny does the explosion. Interesting. So there must be multiple axes.
Either multiple axes or somehow, some way before they left for the boat. That's why, like, in my brain, this chase lady, she's one of the cohort.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
he keeps on leading Simon directly to where he needs Simon to be.
Yeah.
Yep. I think in the deleted scene of this issue, it's like Miss Morgan coming to her back door and opening it to one of the red-hooded dudes with a little box, and he just gives it to her, and she's like, yes. And she goes, and then she goes and gives it to Benny, and they go get on the boat. Because I would wager it's the same axe, but that somehow, somebody brought it to him or whatever. Because that's a heck of a catch, Snoggle. Good eye.
Is he that sadistic that I think you were saying it, Michael? He is like distraught. He is sad. Why wouldn't you just like wait till he turned around and just?
I think that is a big question. Hopefully we get that answered in the next one. Like why did he draw this out? What is his plan? What is he wants to kill him, but why? There's still some mysteries that need to be solved.
You're right. I need to, like, you guys know how sometimes with a TV show or a book and with a comic, I need to read the 6th book of this series.
Yes.
As much as Simon Pure needs to consistently eat.
You need to consume more Redcoat, is what you're saying.
Yes.
Or you will not be sustained.
I won't make it. And I feel like I have to wait until mid-September.
There is one other thing that we should mention, and that is something that Snoggle said on the previous episode ended up making a lot of sense. Not that it didn't at the time, but the direct correlation does now. If you recall, the aesthetic and the architecture to an extent, like the totem poles, in the underground pyramid, Becky said previously that it seemed similar to the secret room that Benedict Arnold had in his home. And at first we were like, yeah, I mean, that makes sense. But it was figuring like, oh, he collects that ancient immortal stuff and they're all around the same immortal stuff and whatever. But now it makes like way more sense. Even stuff like, remember the pile of dinosaur bones, but then Benny had like a bunch of dinosaur skeletons. Like there's a whole bunch of what the heck is this guy doing with all this stuff going on?
Do you think we'll ever know why those dinosaur bones were on fire?
Oh, yeah, totally. I think that there's got to be something to do. I don't know what it has to do with, but I there's got to be something to do with it. That's a question for Mr. Hitch, perhaps the next time he graces us with his presence. Write that down. There you go. I did want to say his whole pretending to be upset, really being upset, building an army, wanting to burn down America. He has a lot of sociopathic tendencies.
Yes.
So that kind of stuff, like typically someone who does that can put on this histrionic presentation to manipulate others and like, it's pretty spot on, like why he had to get through that speech before getting him in the back for number 3,
Yeah.
That little preview for the next page looked like Simon's getting pretty rough in that next issue. So I guess hopefully he survives because we don't want just 7 issues of Redcoat, Brian.
He said there'd be hundreds.
I know, but he also said that's because like he could time travel and stuff. So who knows? Like he could be like taken out of this moment, Marty McFly brought back, and then you never know.
Oh.
He does look like he's getting old.
Yeah,
in this preview.
I'm guessing that's rapid aging as a result of the enchantment fading, but I guess we'll find out.
What do you guys think they bleeped out here? Grand Architect revealed. Simon's immortality removed. America is...
I don't know. Saved is what it should say, right? America.
My only thought is bring us issue 6 now.
Yeah.
We need it bi-weekly. Can we put in that request to Ghost Machine?
Bi-weekly?
Yeah, bi-weekly.
I don't know. I get the impression that Brian is a busy man. Like he's he posts on his Instagram like with wine sometimes, and you're like, that's a hardworking dude. I saw one picture where like his hand was blue from some ink and stuff like that. I don't know how they do it. I would be terrified if I spilled ink on like a whole page I worked on for how long. I've seen that happen. I think it was Francis. No, absolutely. That would be awesome. But it does make it one of those where it's like, man, when these come out in trades, it'll be awesome to just sit and read the whole story again and experience.
Absolutely.
And think about it when you can hand the collected edition to a new reader one day, like the difference in the experience that they're going to have, and being able to talk about that with them it'll be really different and neat compared to like.
There's something exciting about the anticipation of having to wait.
It would just be better if it was only a 2-week wait. That's what you're saying.
That's true. I did bring up this listener mail, by the way.
Would you like to read it?
Listener mail this week. Question comes from Chandler. Our son has a schoolmate named Chandler. It's probably not the same person. I was just reading it so seriously. Chandler writes, "Hi, Ghost Machine fans. I love listening to your show when I take my daily walks. I recently started reading all 3 ongoing series. My shop was able to get me all of the regular covers, even back to the number 1s. However, I just found out about the Geiger and Junkyard Joe book that came before. Do I have to go back and read those to understand what is going on?"
I don't think yet. I think at this point you could just enjoy all 3 books without having read those. Like I know, I do a podcast, and I've gotten my co-host addicted to Geiger, and he has not read the previous books, and he seems to be really enjoying the current series. So I don't think yet, but I think everyone should go back and read those to prepare themselves for what's about to happen, is my guess.
You mean as the stories continue to converge?
Yeah,
And
I
then-
do think there will be callbacks to those series.
I agree. Like, especially Junkyard Joe and I mean, the 80-page giant, just even some of the little snippets that I think will grace our presence later on in books.
Yeah.
I don't think they're essential right now to know what's going on.
I would say that you want to read them when you can. If you don't read Junkyard Joe, even though Junkyard Joe is actually my favorite, you won't lose anything except quite literally a one page like aha amazing reveal. Although it's fantastic comics and you need to read it because it'll move you and it's fantastic comics. It's really, you got to get out and read that. You support your local comic book shop and get it from them. The Geiger book, which is Geiger 1 through 6, which is considered volume 1, which was released in 2021. That will tell you a bit more about like his family, his origin, and like if you know Jeff Johns sad, it's like the saddest of the Jeff Johns sad.
Yeah.
Sad Jeff Johns. And I'm supportive of that. I'm not, I enjoy that because he presents it usually in a way that I can digest. But it is of a different tone than what we have now, which is still written by Jeff and drawn by Gary. But it will really tell you stuff about him that will make the experience you're having with the issues now enhanced. But it is not necessary to understand what's going on. It definitely will be as soon as you start to see things like when Redcoat's in the same world as Geiger, which I think we've seen a couple of panels in Geiger 3, like the current ongoing, that have alluded to that. If you were like, holy cow, what's going on with that? Go back and read those other books. Because you have to understand that 80-page Giant and Ghost Machine #1 both have additional Redcoat stories that don't all take place in the past. And the most important part is, and it was kind of our motivation to really get this thing going in the first place, is that there wasn't much of a backlog. Snoggle is quite literally 100% caught up in a matter of 22 weeks, because this is our 22nd episode, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what's so awesome about that, even though it's really great, Chandler, that you're picking up every single issue of the ongoing series, is that
Chandler.
Chandler is it will just enhance what you've got, like just so much more, and it won't take very long. It'll it's just a handful of issues. And there's one other one that's a 2-issue series called Geiger Ground Zero, and it's a quick read. It's super good. And it tells you a little bit more about exactly how his power is manifested and how his super suit came to be, boron rods. And it gives you some clarity on the relationship that he has with the person who assisted him when he first came out of his, nuclear condition or whatever.
And I feel like completely unnecessary for the future, but you should read The Blizzard because it was amazing. Have you read it, Michael?
I have not. This is like I need to get it. I have to get this. Okay.
So good. There's only a small snippet basically at the end that ties it into the timeline, but it's very much like The Thing, and there's definitely horror elements to it. Like, it's pretty gnarly.
Cool.
I really enjoyed it.
I know what I'm doing on Wednesday when I get to my local comic shop. I'm gonna order it.
It's so good.
It is a good
but
one.
Unnecessary to know. There's one of the characters, I won't spoil it, but one of the characters from our books that we're reading right now is featured like at the very last page or two. And it is really fan service to be like, oh,
yeah, it's very unexpected.
So
cool.
Well, thanks for writing in, Chandler. We appreciate that. And thanks for listening to the show. Do either of you, wonderful compatriots of mine, even though you're a Canadian loyalist, Michael, have anything else for the show?
No, I got nothing else. I'm just looking forward to the next one.
Cool. Well, hey, you mentioned that you do a podcast. Real quick before Snoggle does her part, what's the name of that podcast? You don't mention that very often.
The podcast is called Wizards, the Podcast Guide to Comics, where we re-examine the 90s comic book boom, and we do a deep dive on each issue of Wizard magazine There's over 250 episodes already. Episodes I haven't been on. I'm currently one of the co-hosts on the current episodes. Yeah, it's a fun series if you like to go back and revisit old 90s comics. We're about to hit the 2000s though, so it'll be interesting. Jeff Johns has already made an appearance in a couple issues that we've been reviewing. Jump into there if you want to revisit older comic books.
You're about to enter the heyday of Top Cow. If you're entering,
Oh yeah.
it's going to be all the darkness and Witchblade and all that kind of.
Oh yeah, we've already been exploring that stuff. Yeah.
Okay.
But I think we're at the point where DC is really coming back strong. This is like, to me, early 2000s is when DC was in its prime.
Yeah, I remember because Michael Turner did stuff with them a little bit too at that time.
Oh yeah.
All right. Well, hey, we'll check that podcast out. How about you, Snoggle? Do you have anything?
Like I said, I'm itching. I have a need to read number 6. Apparently, I'm going to be insufferable for like a solid month. In a week or two, I think it's the 4th, not next Wednesday, but September 4th. At least we get Rook Exodus number 5.
Mm-hmm.
So that'll be good. That'll tide me over a little bit. Maybe I'll read the Ashcan.
Yeah.
High Street Ashcan. Yeah, I'll get you that. I got you covered.
I'm just excited, you know?
It sounds like that one SNL skit, and they're like, I got a sickness. There's only one cure. Small Redcoat.
That is the best way to end this episode.
All right.
100%.
Well, as the music rolls, don't forget to go check out all of our other awesome content at www.ghostmachinefans.com, especially on the Instagram, where we've posted a lot of really cool new videos of the Fan Expo Canada, as well as some creative stuff that we've did for the Hyde Street Ashcan. We will check you next time on the Ghost Machine Fans Podcast.
Podcast.